Tina Clayton caught up brilliantly. Shericka Jackson and Lavania Williams running well. Chanel Smith's coming forward. It is Tina Clayton and Shericka Jackson gets it. What a performance from Shericka Jackson. The veteran comes up big and defeats the World Championship silver medal.
For years, Shericka Jackson was known as one of the world's best athletes. Then, almost overnight, she became one of the fastest women in history. But that's only part of the story. Hidden behind the medals, the world titles, and the breathtaking speed is a journey that very few people saw coming. Before she was chasing one of the most legendary records in track and field, Shericka Jackson was competing in an entirely different event. Almost no one believed she would one day dominate the 200 meters, let alone challenge the greatest sprinters the sport has ever known. Then everything changed. Race after race, championship after championship, she began rewriting Jamaica's record books. Records that had survived for decades started disappearing. Milestones once owned by one of the country's greatest sprint legends, Merlene Ottey, suddenly belonged to someone else. Yet even after becoming a two-time world champion and the second fastest woman ever over 200 meters, Shericka still wasn't satisfied, because one number continued to stand above them all: 21.34 seconds. The world record set by Florence Griffith Joyner in 1988 remains one of the most iconic achievements in athletics. Many have tried to reach it. None have succeeded. Now, every time Shericka Jackson steps onto the track, one question follows her. Can she become the woman who finally ends one of the longest-standing records in sports history? Or is her greatest challenge still waiting just beyond the finish line? The answer isn't just about speed. It's about resilience, reinvention, and the relentless pursuit of greatness. Long before Shericka Jackson became the second fastest woman in history over 200 meters, she was simply a young girl growing up in Ocho Rios, Jamaica. Today, millions know her for explosive finishes and world-class speed, but her journey began far from the bright lights of international stadiums. Like many Jamaican children, athletics was woven into everyday life. Running wasn't just another school activity, it was part of the culture. Every race was a chance to prove yourself, and every competition carried the dream of representing a nation famous for producing sprinting legends. But here's what made Shericka's path so unusual. She wasn't expected to become one of the greatest 200-meter sprinters the world had ever seen. In fact, for much of her early career, she wasn't even known as a sprinter. She was a 400-meter runner. That single detail changes the way her entire story is understood. The 400 meters demands patience, endurance, rhythm, and tactical control. It's a race where athletes must carefully balance speed with stamina. Success depends on surviving the final stretch as much as exploding out of the blocks. Shericka mastered that challenge. As she developed under the guidance of respected Jamaican coach Stephen Francis and the MVP Track Club, she steadily earned a reputation as one of Jamaica's most dependable quarter-milers. She wasn't always the athlete grabbing headlines, but coaches knew exactly what she brought to every championship: consistency, determination, and an ability to perform under pressure. Her breakthrough on the international stage came through the 400 meters. At the 2015 World Championships, she claimed bronze in the individual event, while also helping Jamaica capture relay gold. 1 year later, at the Rio Olympics, she added another Olympic bronze in the 400 meters and a relay silver medal. For most athletes, that would have been enough. Winning Olympic and World Championship medals in your specialty is the dream. But Shericka's story was only beginning. Behind the scenes, something unexpected was happening. Her natural speed over shorter distances kept improving. Training sessions began revealing another side of her talent. Coaches noticed that she possessed explosive acceleration few 400-meter runners could match. The more she worked on sprinting, the more obvious it became that her future might lie somewhere completely different. Changing events at the highest level of international athletics is incredibly rare. Elite athletes spend years perfecting one discipline. Switching from the 400 meters to the explosive world of the 100 and 200 meters is like asking a marathon cyclist to suddenly compete in track sprints. The physical demands are different. The technique is different. Even the mindset is different. Yet Shericka embraced the challenge. Slowly, she began entering more sprint races. At first, many observers saw it as an interesting experiment rather than a permanent move. Then the results started arriving. At the Tokyo Olympics in 2021, she won bronze in the 100 meters and helped Jamaica secure gold in the 4x 100 meter relay. Those performances proved she belonged among the world's fastest sprinters. But there was also disappointment. During the Olympic 200 meters, she failed to advance after easing up near the finish of her qualifying race, a costly mistake that kept her out of the final. It was a frustrating reminder that talent alone isn't always enough at the highest level. Sometimes, the smallest decision changes everything. Instead of allowing that disappointment to define her season, Shericka returned with even greater determination. The following year, she arrived at the World Athletics Championships with something to prove. Few people expected what happened next. She didn't simply win. She produced one of the fastest 200-meter performances the sport had ever witnessed. Crossing the finish line in 21.45 seconds, Jackson became world champion and moved to second on the all-time list, trailing only Florence Griffith Joyner's legendary world record. Suddenly, the conversation changed. She was no longer just a successful athlete who had switched events. She had become one of the greatest 200-meter runners in history. Fans across Jamaica celebrated what many called one of the most remarkable transformations the sport had ever seen. Media outlets praised her courage to reinvent herself instead of remaining comfortable in an event where she had already earned Olympic medals. Her story became a reminder that sometimes the biggest breakthrough comes from having the courage to start over. But as extraordinary as that world title was, an even greater chapter was waiting just around the corner. Because over the next 2 seasons, Shericka Jackson wouldn't just chase history. She would begin rewriting it. Becoming world champion in 2022 was supposed to be the peak of Shericka Jackson's career. Instead, it became the beginning of something even bigger. The following season, every major race carried enormous expectations. Rivals studied her technique. Fans packed stadiums hoping to witness another unforgettable performance. Analysts debated whether anyone could stop her. For the first time, Shericka wasn't chasing the world's best. She was the athlete everyone else was chasing. Then came Budapest. On one warm evening at the 2023 World Athletics Championships, Shericka walked onto the track with the calm confidence of someone who knew exactly what she was capable of. There was no unnecessary emotion, no dramatic celebration before the race, just complete focus. When the starting gun fired, she exploded into the curve with remarkable control. By the time the athletes entered the home straight, it was obvious something extraordinary was unfolding. Stride after stride, she separated herself from the field. No one could match her speed. No one could close the gap. She crossed the finish line in 21.41 seconds, defending her world title and recording the second fastest legal women's 200-meter time in history. It was also a new World Championships record, surpassing a mark that had stood for more than 3 decades. For most athletes, that performance would have been a dream come true. But when cameras focused on Shericka after the race, many noticed something unexpected. She wasn't celebrating wildly. Instead, she looked toward the clock. She knew exactly how close she had come. Just 0.07 of a second separated her from Florence Griffith Joyner's legendary world record of 21.34. In the world of elite sprinting, 0.07 of a second is both incredibly small and incredibly significant. It's the difference between chasing history and making it. The performance immediately reignited one of track and field's biggest debates. Could Shericka Jackson actually break one of the oldest and most iconic records in athletics? Fans flooded social media with excitement. Former athletes praised her smooth running style, while commentators pointed out how effortless she looked despite producing one of the fastest races ever recorded. The discussion wasn't just about one championship anymore. It was about legacy. A few weeks later, Shericka had another opportunity to test herself against the clock during the Diamond League final in Brussels. Again, expectations were enormous. Could this finally be the race? She ran brilliantly once more, stopping the clock in 21.48 seconds. It was another world-class performance, but the record remained untouched. Afterward, Shericka acknowledged the challenge with quiet confidence. She made it clear that breaking the world record wouldn't happen by wishing for it. It would require patience, preparation, and continuous improvement. That mindset became one of the defining qualities of her career. She never allowed near misses to become disappointments. Instead, they became motivation. Then came 2024. Everything appeared perfectly aligned. Shericka entered the Olympic season as the reigning two-time world champion and widely regarded as the woman to beat in the 200 meters. Many believed Paris would finally deliver the one major title missing from her remarkable resume, Olympic gold in her signature event. But elite sport rarely follows the script. Just weeks before the Games, she suffered a calf injury during a competition in Hungary. Suddenly, months of preparation were overshadowed by uncertainty. The injury forced her to withdraw from the Olympic 200 meters. Instead of competing for gold, she watched the race from the sidelines. For an athlete who had spent years building toward that moment, it was heartbreaking. Fans around the world shared messages of encouragement, recognizing how cruel timing can be in professional sports. Many believed she would have been among the favorites had she been healthy. For the first time in years, Shericka wasn't fighting opponents on the track. She was fighting her own body. The disappointment could easily have become the defining story of her career. But anyone who had followed Shericka Jackson's journey already knew something important. She had never been someone who gave up after one setback. And once again, she was preparing for another comeback. One that would prove why champions are remembered not only for how they win, but for how they respond when everything goes wrong. When Shericka Jackson missed the chance to compete for Olympic gold in Paris, many people wondered if her best years had already passed. It's a question every great athlete eventually faces. Can they come back? Can they return to the level that once made them nearly unbeatable? For Shericka, the answer wasn't going to come through interviews or promises. It would come on the track. Instead of rushing back into competition, she and her coaching team focused on something much more important: getting healthy. Recovery became the priority. Every training session was about rebuilding strength, restoring confidence, and making sure her body could once again handle the demands of world-class sprinting. It wasn't the kind of comeback that dominates headlines. It happened quietly, one race at a time, one training session after another. When she returned to competition, the results didn't immediately resemble the athlete who had run 21.41 seconds in Budapest. But that never seemed to concern her. Each race showed gradual progress, and with every finish line she crossed, the confidence slowly returned. Fans noticed the difference. The explosive stride was coming back. The smooth running form that had made her so difficult to beat was beginning to reappear. Then came another important milestone. Back on the international circuit, Jackson produced her fastest 200-meter performance since her incredible 2023 season. It wasn't just the time that mattered, it was what it represented. She was healthy again. Soon afterward, she added another Jamaican national title to her remarkable career, once again proving that she remained one of the country's premier sprinters despite everything she had been through. For many observers, that was the moment the conversation changed. Instead of asking whether Shericka could return, people started asking how much faster she could still become. That question leads back to the number that has followed her throughout the second half of her career: 21.34 seconds. Florence Griffith Joyner's world record has stood since 1988, surviving generations of Olympic champions and world title winners. Some have come close, but none have managed to rewrite history. Shericka Jackson has come closer than almost anyone. Her personal best of 21.41 seconds places her just 0.07 of a second away from one of the most famous records in athletics. In a sport decided by fractions of a second, the gap is both incredibly small and extraordinarily difficult to overcome. Still, the possibility remains. Every time Jackson steps onto the track, fans, analysts, and former champions begin calculating what might happen if everything comes together on one perfect day. A great start, a flawless curve, ideal weather, peak fitness. Sometimes that's all it takes to make history. But even if the world record never falls, Shericka Jackson has already secured a place among the greatest sprinters her country has ever produced. Her impact extends beyond medals. She transformed herself from an elite 400-meter runner into one of the fastest 100 and 200-meter athletes in history, something almost no one thought was possible. She proved that athletes are not always limited by the event where they first found success. Sometimes, the greatest version of yourself is still waiting to be discovered. Her achievements have also strengthened Jamaica's extraordinary sprinting legacy. For decades, legends like Merlene Ottey inspired future generations through remarkable consistency and longevity. Jackson has carried that tradition forward while creating a legacy entirely her own. Rather than simply following those who came before her, she has added a new chapter to Jamaica's rich history in track and field. As attention gradually shifts toward future global championships and the 2028 Los Angeles Olympics, anticipation continues to build. She will enter those years with experience, world titles, Olympic medals, and the knowledge that she has already overcome injuries, setbacks, and enormous expectations. The biggest races may still be ahead. Will she finally capture the Olympic 200-meter gold medal that has narrowly escaped her? Could she become the woman who finally breaks one of athletics' longest-standing world records? No one knows. That's what makes the story so compelling. Shericka Jackson's career has never followed the path people expected. Time after time, she has surprised the track and field world by refusing to accept limits placed on her. And perhaps that's her greatest achievement of all. Not just becoming one of the fastest women in history, but proving that reinvention, patience, and perseverance can be just as powerful as raw speed. Her story is still being written, and the finish line may be farther away than anyone realizes. Shericka Jackson's journey reminds us that greatness isn't always about reaching the finish line first. Sometimes it's about having the courage to reinvent yourself, the resilience to overcome setbacks, and the determination to keep chasing history even when the odds seem impossible. Now we'd love to hear from you. Do you believe Shericka Jackson will eventually break Florence Griffith Joyner's legendary 21.34 second world record? And as we look ahead to the 2028 Los Angeles Olympics, do you think she'll finally win the individual Olympic 200-meter gold medal that has remained just out of reach? Share your thoughts in the comments below. We read every comment and would love to hear your predictions. If you enjoyed this documentary and want more in-depth stories about legendary athletes, unforgettable races, and the incredible journeys behind the biggest moments in sports, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss a new documentary. Thank you for watching. Until next time, remember that records may define history, but it's resilience that defines legends.